She was smart. She was funny. She was loved by her parents and adored by her classmates. 16-year-old Skylar Neese had her entire life ahead of her. But on one warm July night in 2012, she quietly slipped out of her West Virginia bedroom window and never came back. No one knew it yet, but Skylar wasn't just missing. She had been betrayed by the very people she called her best friends. This is the tragic story of Skylar Neese, a teenager who trusted the wrong people and paid for it with her life. And how the case, once cold, was blown wide open by a chilling confession. Skylar lived in Star City, a quiet suburb near Morgantown, West Virginia. A straight-A student with dreams of becoming a criminal defense lawyer, she was well-liked and came from a loving home. Her parents, Dave and Mary Neese, were proud of her independence. She worked a part-time job at Wendy's, kept up with school, and maintained an active social life. She was especially close to two friends, Sheila Eddy and Rachel Shoaf. The three girls were practically inseparable. But as time went on, Skylar began feeling like the third wheel. Jealousy and petty arguments became more common. Skylar even tweeted things like, "You doing shit like this is why I will never completely trust you. And all I do is waste my breath, my thoughts, and my time." On the evening of July 5, 2012, Skylar came home from her shift at Wendy's, ate dinner with her parents, and went to her room around 10 p.m. Sometime after midnight, she quietly climbed out of her bedroom window and got into a car with Sheila and Rachel. Security footage from the apartment complex showed her sneaking into a vehicle at 12:30 a.m. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. When her parents woke up and realized she hadn't come home, panic set in. Her room was neat, her window was open, and her bed looked untouched. They called the police, but the initial response was underwhelming. Since Skylar was 16, law enforcement initially believed she was a runaway. After all, she had willingly left her house. There were no signs of a struggle. But her parents knew better. Skylar would never leave without her phone charger, her contact lenses, or telling anyone. Something felt wrong. Deeply wrong. It would take 6 months, a guilty conscience, and a horrifying secret between teenage girls to reveal what really happened that night. In the days after Skylar's disappearance, her parents handed out flyers, made emotional TV pleas, and begged for help on social media. But Skylar had simply vanished. The car security footage gave police one critical clue. Skylar willingly got into a sedan that night. When investigators asked her two closest friends, Sheila Eddy and Rachel Shoaf, they claimed they'd picked her up for a late-night joyride, dropped her back off an hour later, and never saw her again. Their story sounded simple, too simple, yet police had no physical evidence of foul play, and Skylar's phone went dead that very night. Sheila especially appeared heartbroken on the surface. She tweeted things like, "Skylar, come home, I miss you so much, please be safe." She even helped the family distribute missing person flyers. But beneath the surface, things weren't adding up. As the weeks turned into months, detectives began noticing strange behavior. Rachel and Sheila were still inseparable, but increasingly aloof when asked about Skylar. Some friends reported seeing them giggle during questioning. One classmate remembered them talking in code. Meanwhile, Skylar's Twitter page remained eerily active in the weeks before her death. She posted cryptic messages like, "You're a two-faced bitch and obviously stupid if you thought I wouldn't find out. Sick of being at fucking home. Thanks, friends. Love hanging out with you all too." It was clear something dark had been brewing long before the night Skylar disappeared. Scene detective montage, news reports, slow zoom on Rachel's photo. Then 6 months later, on January 3, 2013, the entire case cracked open. Rachel Shoaf snapped. After months of pressure, internal guilt, and what her parents described as a mental breakdown, Rachel confessed in a panicked 911 call. She said she couldn't live with the secret anymore. At the police station, Rachel told detectives something they never expected. Skylar Neese hadn't run away. She had been murdered by Rachel Shoaf and Sheila Eddy, her two best friends. They had planned it for months. When asked why they did it, Rachel's answer was chilling in its simplicity. "We just didn't like her anymore." Rachel led investigators to a remote wooded area across the Pennsylvania state line, about 30 miles from Skylar's home. There, under snow and branches, investigators found human remains. They belonged to Skylar Neese. Her final resting place was the middle of nowhere. Her so-called friends had lured her out, driven her into the woods, and stabbed her to death in cold blood. The confession shocked the entire country. Two bright, seemingly normal teenage girls had calmly and coldly plotted to murder their best friend. Rachel Shoaf's admission stunned even seasoned detectives. But the bigger question remained, why? What could possibly drive two 16-year-olds to commit such a brutal act? The details that followed were haunting. Rachel and Sheila had grown closer in the months leading up to the murder, excluding Skylar more and more. Behind her back, they mocked her, avoided her, and plotted her death. They even brought knives, cleaning supplies, and spare clothes with them on the night of the murder, proving this was no impulsive act. On July 6, 2012, they picked up Skylar under the guise of a late-night drive, just like they'd done before. They laughed, smoked, and joked until they reached a remote clearing in the woods near Brave, Pennsylvania. Then, on the count of 3, they stabbed her over 50 times. Skylar managed to run, but was tackled. Her final words, according to Rachel's confession, why? After Rachel's confession, Sheila Eddy was arrested on May 1, 2013, nearly a year after the murder. By then, she'd attended prom, tweeted like nothing was wrong, and lived as if Skylar had simply disappeared. Her composure chilled investigators. It was as if she had no remorse. Rachel Shoaf was charged with second-degree murder and sentenced to 30 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 10. Sheila Eddy pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison, with parole possible after 15 years. Both girls were just 16 years old when they took a life and destroyed 3 families. For Dave and Mary Neese, the pain never faded, but their strength turned tragedy into change. They lobbied for Skylar's Law, passed in West Virginia in 2013, which requires an Amber Alert to be issued for all missing children, not just those believed to be abducted. Their daughter's name would now be tied not just to betrayal, but to protection. Skylar's final months live on through her haunting tweets, her bright smile, and the lessons her case left behind. This wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't about money or abuse. It was a senseless murder born from peer pressure, jealousy, and a desire to just get rid of someone who felt inconvenient. Her killers weren't monsters in the dark. They were girls who laughed with her at lunch, and laughed again as they took her life. The saddest thing about betrayal is that it never comes from your enemies. Unknown. If you found this case powerful, subscribe for more stories like this every week. Until next time, stay safe, and never underestimate the darkness that can hide behind a smile.